Star Trek Deep Space Nine, The Star Ghost. Chapter 5. The fight in the promenade was sharp but short. Odo himself came to the scene to sort things out. The Bajorans loudly claimed that the Cardassians had begun the fight, and the Cardassians in turn objected that the Bajorans had attacked them for absolutely no reason at all. In the end, the security crew escorted 3 Cardassians and 5 Bajorans to Ops. Nog watched all this from a perch on level 2 of the promenade, and when he was sure the coast was clear, he set off for Ops himself. He got there just moments behind the security crew and the rioters. Standing against the wall with his arms crossed, Miles O'Brien was waiting outside Commander Sisko's office. However, Security Chief Odo's mission apparently was more important than O'Brien's, because the head of station security escorted his prisoners into the office. A few of the station's crew watched them go and murmured questions to one another about exactly what had happened. Nog worked his way over to O'Brien and asked,
"Did you tell him?"
O'Brien gave him a surprised look. "I thought you'd gone home to bed." "No, I haven't told Commander Sisko yet. He was on subspace communication with Starfleet when I arrived, and then this riot broke out. But I promise I'll give him your message just as soon as..." "Uh-oh." It was the voice of a young ensign over at the operations table. "Chief, you better come and have a look at this. According to the readout, all docking ports just lost primary power." "What?" O'Brien's red face grew even redder as he hurried over and gave the computer status screen a quick, expert glance. "Bloody Cardassian bucket of bolts. I see what you mean. All right, Ensign Jonas, I'm on it. Have a maintenance crew meet me at the main power juncture on the docking ring in 5 minutes. Probably just the bloody power relay sensors malfunctioning again, but we'll have to make sure."
"Wait!"
Nog called.
"What about..."
O'Brien shook his head. "Sorry, Nog. I have a job to do. Look, this shouldn't take long, and that lot in the office will probably keep the commander busy for a little while anyway. As soon as we've repaired the docking port power, I'll be back, lad. Now don't worry, Nog. I'm sure everything will be all right." To the ensign, O'Brien barked, "This won't wait all night, you know. What about that repair crew?" "On the way, sir," responded Jonas. O'Brien hurried away, leaving an angry and frustrated Nog. He slyly glanced around. No one was looking at him. He edged over to Commander Sisko's office door just as a furious-looking Cardassian in captain's uniform came striding toward it. The door hissed open, and when the Cardassian marched inside, Nog slipped right in behind him, completely unnoticed. He immediately lost himself in a dark corner and became all ears. Not a hard task for a Ferengi. "This is an outrage!" the newcomer roared at once, the huge ropey tendons in his neck swollen with strong emotion. "Sisko, if your people can't even guarantee my crew's security against an unprovoked attack by a vicious pack of..." "Quiet!" snapped Sisko, his voice raspy and irritated. He looked tired, edgy, and ready to hit someone. "Gul Chuck, more angry words won't help the situation. The fight is over, and no one was injured, fortunately. As to the question of who started it, we're in the process of settling that right now, so don't be too quick to assign blame." He turned back to Odo. "Chief Odo, continue your report." With a glance at Chalk, the shapeshifter said, "As I was saying, Commander, the witnesses make it plain that Barris Kavar struck the first blow. After having been goaded by those bullies," objected one of the Bajorans. "Commander, their race, enslaved mine for decades, treated us worse than animals. To sit so close to this monster, to hear his foul insults was more than I could stand." Commander Sisko held his hand up for silence. "Exactly what did he say?" he demanded. The Bajoran looked defiantly at one of the Cardassians who smirked back at him. "He called us sheep!" exclaimed the Bajoran. The others murmured in angry agreement. Standing as tall as he could, Barris added, "I don't have to stand for that." With a sigh, Commander Sisko said, "And you happen to know what a sheep is, Mr. Barris?" "Of course," sputtered the enraged Bajoran. "Everyone knows that a sheep is, well, it's a kind of... And who wants to be called one anyway?" "I thought so." Sisko turned to the Cardassian captain. Very well, Golchok. I cannot say your crew were blameless in this incident, but I cannot find them guilty of anything more serious than childish behavior. In fact, both sides have behaved like brats. I propose that we release all these prisoners, on the condition that they agree to avoid each other. Poor discipline, Commander, growled Chalk. However, I agree to the compromise. My men will take some refreshment at that Ferengi place. Have these sheep go elsewhere. One of the Bajorans stirred, but a security man placed a warning hand on his shoulder. Sisko nodded. Then go now, and take all your crew with you. Only 6 hours left before the deadline, Commander, said Chalk. I trust my answer is coming. For the last time, I will not tolerate ultimatums, replied Sisko. The question is before Starfleet and the Bajoran government now. I've put everything in motion. I suggest you do the same. The commander glanced meaningfully at the door. Come, ordered Golchok. He turned and left the office. Slowly, in single file, the insolent Cardassians strutted out behind him, unpleasant grins on their faces. And these Bajorans? Asked Odo, with a gesture at the 5 remaining prisoners. Commander Sisko sighed. He rubbed his eyes. First, let me tell them a little about sheep. Barris, sheep are, noble earth creatures. They're noted for their solidarity and their use to humankind as providers of wool, a fabric that protects the elderly and the young from the elements. I would suggest that you Bajorans ignore any such meaningless taunts from the Cardassians in the future, since the Cardassians clearly do not know what they are talking about. Barris looked a little puzzled, but at last he nodded. Believe me, Commander, the last thing we want to do is to encounter those unmannered, ignorant, savage animals again. But this space station is supposed to be a joint venture of your people and mine. If you allow our old enemies free run of the place, my government will be most displeased. Tell it to get in line, said Commander Sisko with a sour expression. Go on now and keep out of trouble. The Bajorans headed toward the door, and Nog slipped out from his hiding place, but not fast enough to escape Odo. The security chief said nothing, but he grasped Nog's arm with a firm grip and escorted him out. The commander is too busy to speak to you at the moment, he said. Please, Nog groaned. This is really important. It's about Jake. Odo tilted his head. He did a good job at maintaining a humanoid form in general, but he tended to let little details slide. His ears, for example, were merely 2 smooth pink shells, and, in Nog's opinion, far too small to make him really impressive. He said, What about Jake? He's in trouble. Chief O'Brien was supposed to tell Commander Sisko, Nog said. Odo looked at the ops table. Where's Chief O'Brien? He asked Ensign Jonas. The busy ensign turned away from his monitors. We're showing a major power failure in the docking ring. Chief O'Brien has taken a crew to repair it. With a nod, Odo asked, Before the chief left, did he say anything about Jake, Sisko? The ensign looked baffled. The commander's son? No, sir. Thank you, Jonas. That is all. With a displeased expression on his face, Odo shook his head. Nog, I hope this will be a lesson to you. You'd better start planning your tricks more carefully if you ever hope to fool anyone. Now leave. We're entirely too busy for your pranks right now. If I catch you in ops again, I am going to be severe. As if he had just thought of something, Odo added, In fact, just to make sure you stay out of trouble, I'll escort you back to your uncle. Now, come along with me before I find some regulation your family has violated and close Quark's den of iniquity. It was an effective threat. Nog tagged along beside Odo, feeling more frustrated than ever. Didn't anybody believe him? He considered going back to Keiko, but she'd just tried to turn things over to O'Brien again. After a moment of indecision, Nog made up his mind. He would have to speak with his uncle. On their way to the restaurant, Nog noticed an unusual number of security types around. Odo's people blended in, but they nodded as their chief passed, and he gave them curt nods in return. Odo must have warned his crew to keep a sharp eye out for trouble. As the two got close to Quark's place, Nog slowed his pace. Something was wrong. At this time of night, Nog's establishment was a loud, boisterous den of revelers and gamblers, usually. But tonight everything seemed strangely quiet. "After you," Odo said as they got to Quark's place. Nog knew he wasn't just being polite. The chief of security was all too aware of how quickly a small, agile Ferengi could slip away the minute no one was watching. Inside, Quark stood behind the bar, looking unhappily.
There you are,
he called out as soon as they entered.
I knew you would come.
After a moment of surprise, Nog realized that his uncle was not even talking to him, but to Odo.
"I am returning your nephew," Odo said coldly. "He strayed into a place where he does not belong. I trust you will see that for the next day or so he remains in his quarters and out of trouble. Good night."
Wait, Quark squawked. A moment of your valuable time, if you please, friend Odo.
Nog glanced around with some curiosity. Now he saw the reason why the place was so deserted. The Cardassians, who had left Ops a few minutes before, had joined more of their kind. A dozen or so of them lounged at the tables. No wonder the place was empty. No one wanted to revel with Cardassians.
"Friend Odo?" asked the security chief in a voice dripping with sarcasm. "That's a new one, Quark. It has always been my impression that the minimum requirement for friendship is that two people like each other."
"Oh, I like you, Odo. I really do,"
objected Quark. He blinked, probably realizing how incredible that declaration sounded. Hastily, he added,
"Or at least I hold the very deepest respect for you and the job you do."
Politely, with a bored smile, Odo murmured,
"Even if you try to violate every rule the moment my back is turned. A strange kind of respect, Quark."
With a despairing glance at the Cardassians, Quark said,
"We can't talk here. Please, just a moment, Odo. I ask you, as a favor."
"Well," Odo said, sounding really impressed.
"If you're that desperate, Quark, I can give you just a moment, no more."
Nog followed the adults into his uncle's office. The door slipped closed, and Quark collapsed into his chair, moaning.
"They are ruining me," he complained.
"Who?" asked Odo.
"The Cardassians," exploded Quark. "No one else will eat or drink here."
"Have the Cardassians broken the law?"
Odo asked, some interest flickering in his voice.
"They're breaking me,"
Quark said. Odo asked,
"Well, what are they doing?"
Quark flapped his hands in a gesture of angry helplessness.
"They're driving customers away and ruining my business. My receipts are down to almost nothing."
"You're serving the Cardassians food and drink," observed Odo. "I assume that they, at least, are paying you?"
Quark pounded the table.
"They're cheap," he howled. "A Cardassian will nibble for hours at a miserable pucker plum salad, and they're drinking nothing but plain, inexpensive water."
Odo sighed.
"Quark, I will be glad to arrest every last Cardassian in the place."
Thank you, friend Odo."
Quark bounded up from his chair, reaching to grasp Odo's hand.
"If there's ever anything I can do for you—"
"Let me finish."
Odo yanked his hand away.
"I will be glad to arrest every Cardassian in the place the moment they break a law. Until then, however, they're your problem."
"Well, what am I supposed to do?"
ranted Quark. With a thoughtful expression, Odo said,
"You might raise the price of pucker plum salad. Good night, friend Quark."
The security chief left. Quark sank back in his chair, glowering at Nog.
"Up to mischief again, are you?"
he demanded. Nog could not meet his uncle's eyes.
"Jake's in trouble,"
he muttered.
"We're all in trouble," returned Quark. "And it's all the fault of those miserable, tight-fisted Cardassians." "Uncle," pleaded Nog, "Jake needs our help."
Quark put both hands to his head.
"Jake, Jake, Jake," he shouted. "That's all I ever hear from you. You know, your father doesn't approve of that human boy. Why don't you find some normal Ferengi friends for a change?" I'm the only Ferengi of my age on the station, objected Nog. But that's not important right now. Jake himself saw the Ferengist.
With a hiss, Quark made a complex sign with his fingers, an ancient Ferengi gesture meant to ward off evil influences.
That's another thing, he said. You with your nonsense about Ferengis and haunts, and I don't know what else. I don't need any more trouble from you. Until these Cardassians are off the station, I want you to stay in your quarters. Do you understand that? Uncle!
Quark waved his hands wildly.
I revoke your rights of free passage. I rescind your contract of freedom of movement. You're to stay confined to your quarters until further notice. You're bankrupt of the coin of freedom. You're, what is that Earth term? Grounded, Nog muttered. You are grounded, Quark thundered. I have spoken. By the prophets of my ancestors, if you show your ears outside your room before you have my permission, I'll have them both for soap dishes.
Quark pressed a pad on the desk, and after a moment, a private security man, a tall, scaly Valpassian, came in.
Yes,
he hissed in his soft reptilian voice.
Vish, my nephew is to go directly to his quarters. Take him there and see him inside. I will arrange a change in the exit code myself. Uncle! Go, Quark ordered. Now I've got to protect my investment. Maybe I could spread a rumor that pucker plum salad causes one's neck to shrink.
Come, said Vish. He laid a cold hand on Nog's shoulder. Defeated, Nog went along quietly. Valpassians were a skinny green species that had descended from a species of intelligent lizards, and they were quick and keen-eyed. He would have no chance of giving Vish a slip. Still, Nog knew he had to find some way of helping Jake. He wished he had some faint idea of what that way might be. Chapter 6. With a strangled cry, Jake threw his arms out and revolved them like a windmill as he tried to regain his balance. Before him, the now solid ghost hovered beside a strange chest-high device shaped a little like a mushroom. The hooded creature held out its device of spheres and rods, and a voice coming from this contraption and not from the creature's lips spoke softly. This form will adjust solidity for more comfort. The voice had an odd, non-human tone halfway between male and female. It added, Close eyes, please. Closing his eyes was one of the hardest things that Jake had ever done. The vast emptiness of space terrified him, and he had the awful feeling that if he shut it out, he would open his eyes to discover himself alone and dying in the cold vacuum between the stars. But he forced his eyelids closed, and for a terrible minute, he seemed to float in an infinite, lonely blackness. Then light burst against his closed eyelids, bright enough to make him see a vivid red, and he felt a humming, droning vibration. He took a deep, shuddering breath of that ozone-scented air. Open now. Is done. Trembling, Jake opened his eyes. He blinked. Now the life form in front of him was almost transparent again. The station, however, had come back, partially. It, too, was somewhat transparent. Jake stood on a deck that was like fogged glass, and through it he could see the piping, support struts, and machinery that kept the life support functioning. He gasped at the brilliance of several rivers of multicolored light, dazzling blue-white streams that gave birth to bright yellow tributaries, which fed to orange branches, which finally gave way to very small networks of reds and purples and magentas. What's that? Jake gasped. All those colors. The tall humanoid creature turned its head to look at the rivers of light. That is energy flow of station power generators to all servo mechanisms. Turning back toward Jake, the creature made the speaking device ask, That form is now functional? Huh? Asked Jake. Do you mean am I all right? Am I all right? Said the creature. I don't know, Jake said. Are you? After a moment of silence, the creature waved its speaking device again. Explain, you. Jake's head swam. Well, he said, I am, me, Jake Sisko. He patted his chest. This form is I. Then am I all right? Jake laughed. No, he said. When you speak, you are I become you. The creature inclined its head. Ah, you and I are a whole. This form understands. I don't think you do, Jake said. Look, I guess I'm okay, but what's happened, and who are you? You are I. Jake shook his head. No, let me ask it differently. Who is that form? He pointed to the creature. Ah, comprehended. This form is a Drakelian quester, an expression of the Drakelian whole. That form is human? With relief, Jake said, Right, I am human. My name is Jake Sisko. Remembering Molly's invisible friend, he asked, Are you Draco? The glaring red-orange eyes could not blink. They had no eyelids, but they suddenly seemed meditative. After a moment, the creature moved its speaking device, and it said, The small one that sees and hears calls this form that. It could not comprehend the nature of the whole. That is why this form has brought Jake Sisko here. Jake Sisko must help this form. Does that form mind if I call it Draco? This form minds not. Okay, Draco, Jake said. I'm glad to meet you. What are you exactly? This form is exactly an expression of the whole. Man, Jake moaned, this is going to take a long time. It did. Little by little, Jake pieced together an amazing story. Draco was not really an individual, he gathered, but more like part of a greater organism, an organism that was an entire species called the Drakelian whole. Just as different parts of the human body serve different functions, some of them circulating blood, others digesting food, and others seeing, hearing, smelling, touching, and tasting, so the different expressions of the Drakelian whole were like organs. Questers, Jake gathered, were a sort of combination of eyes and ears. Their job was to observe the universe, somehow feeding the information they gathered back to the whole. Jake asked, Where do you come from? How did you get here? With practice, Draco was getting the hang of conversation. At first, its dark gray face had held no readable expression, but Jake saw that his impression had been mistaken. In fact, the flesh of the face was incredibly mobile, and the downturned mouth quirked and wriggled as the cheeks swelled or shrank and the eyes glowed darker or brighter. He could not understand these strange expressions, but somehow they made the quester a little more real and less alien. We live, the quester explained, a kind of existence not like yours. This here and now is one expression of space-time. We live in another. Is that why we can't see you? Jake asked. Yes. We live in a place between this material universe and a plane of pure energy. Oh, Jake said. Like a different dimension? Dimension, said the speaking device, as if trying the word for the first time ever. Yes, dimension will serve. We know your place of existence, but it is cloudy to us. Our science has allowed us to observe. That is the task of this form, to observe and report. None of the large, solid peoples can see this form, only the very young ones. You're invisible to adults? Asked Jake. Invisible, repeated Draco. Yes. This form, Draco, does not understand why young can see, old cannot. Jake Sisko is between young and old. Jake Sisko is partly aware of this form. That is why Draco must speak to Jake Sisko. I see, said Jake, wondering if he really did. Are you the only quester here, Draco? The mobile face suddenly gave Jake an impression of enormous age and great loneliness. Yes. The ghostly form touched the mushroom-shaped device. Draco came in a quester ship to this part of the galaxy through the fabric disturbance many of your years ago. All alone since. Jake frowned. Fabric disturbance? He asked. Is that what we call the Bajoran wormhole? Wormhole, agreed the device. Yes. Bridge to other side of galaxy, where the whole evolved. This expression, Draco, came first here when this station was constructed.
By the Cardassians?
Jake asked. Yes. Draco saw them and their victims, those Jake Sisko calls the Bajorans. Draco lived invisibly aboard the station to witness and report.
Wow, Jake said. You must be really old.
The whole knows no age, said the device, but Draco knows aloneness. Draco felt the pain of the Bajorans, felt the anger of the Cardassians. Draco, hard to say, feels inside the Cardassians wish to destroy. Draco does not like destroyment of those Draco observes.
Jake felt uneasy. I don't understand, Draco. Do you mean that Deep Space Nine is in some kind of danger now?
Terrible danger, the speaking device said. Draco adjusted one of the spheres, and suddenly the voice increased in volume and urgency. Jake Sisko, this station will be destroyed. All aboard will die. This happens soon.
What?
Jake asked, feeling his stomach turn over.
Deep Space Nine will be destroyed?
All aboard will die. Must help give warning to save those forms aboard this station. The quester leaned forward, its orange-red eyes blazing with intense appeal. Jake Sisko, you only can save this station. If Vish had been a Ferengi, he might have suspected that something was wrong when Nog went along to his quarters so quietly. Vish's species hatched their young from eggs and allowed them to grow up on their own. Vish had never had to deal with a young person, so he went his way, sure that Nog was safe and sound and locked in. It was only partly true. Nog was safe, all right, but as soon as the door hissed closed, he tried immediately to open it with a stern verbal order. The door did not move. Nog had hoped that Quark's difficulties with his unruly Cardassian customers would distract his uncle from his threat to change the door codes, but Quark had remembered. It was time for Plan B. Nog went to his bedroom. Rom, Nog's father, tried to be a good Ferengi parent. For example, he regularly searched Nog's room to find anything that Nog might have hidden. To keep him happy, Nog concealed lots of small items in easy-to-find places. A lost ring he'd found that bore an Altarian flame gem, a platinum coin he had sneaked from a careless gambler's winnings, and other little tidbits. And he always protested loudly and angrily when Rom confiscated these. But that was only for show. In his real hiding places, Nog kept some treasures that Rom never found. He opened a light module. He switched off one of the light globes and removed it. Nog regretted having to break the globe because figuring out how to get the replicator to duplicate the globe right around his special find had been very difficult. However, he was desperate, so he carefully wrapped the globe in a permasheet and smashed it. Then he retrieved his prize from the shards. He reprogrammed the food replicator to recycle the broken light globe and fabricated a new one, then replaced it in the module. Then he set about his escape. Nog's uncle Quark had one treasure that he valued above all others. It was a set of Cardassian isolinear chips. These computer components could override any computer commands that required security clearance. After weeks of careful planning, Nog had stolen one chip from his uncle's supply. He plugged the chip into the computer terminal and ordered,
"Computer, override Quark's order and open the portal of Rom's living quarters immediately."
The door slid open, and Nog dashed through. He felt a strong pang of regret. Quark would be sure to guess how Nog had opened the door, and he would demand the return of the stolen isolinear chip. Still, Nog thought, his uncle would have to admire his cleverness in stealing and using the chip. He hoped it would all balance out somehow. He took a twisting route that only he knew back to Ops. This time he was determined to see his mission through. Almost as soon as he arrived, the commander came out of his office with Odo close behind.
"They are annoying us on purpose," Odo said. "We will have no peace on Deep Space Nine until you order those Cardassians off the station."
"Odo, I can't," said Commander Sisko. He looked brutally tired. Nog realized the commander had been awake for almost 24 hours. The big man yawned and said, "As you said, we have no reason to arrest them until they break the law." Odo leaned forward. He was beginning to look tired too, melting a bit at the edges.
Commander, I have checked Golchok's background. He and his crew have no legal standing among the Cardassians. They are little better than criminals, passing themselves off as representatives of their government. Chok may command his own ship, but he has no right to the military rank of Gul. Has it occurred to you that the Cardassians could be terrorists?
Of course it has, Commander Sisko said. Chok and his crew may be a group of space pirates, but Cardassians hang together, and his government is not about to confess to Starfleet that Chok is beyond their control.
Or perhaps he is not, Odo insisted. Commander, I know the Cardassians. There's a real possibility that the Cardassian government has sent Chok here on a secret mission of sabotage.
The commander gave Odo a sarcastic grin. Including wiping out Quark's profits? No, Odo, I really can't see that they've done anything that could seriously harm Deep Space Nine. I assure you, the second that I do... Nog took a deep breath. He had concealed himself behind the ops table. Now he stepped around it.
Commander Sisko, he said, I have to talk to you.
You again?
With a disgusted grunt, Odo stepped forward and grabbed his arm.
You'll have to learn your lesson more forcefully, he said. Very well. This time I'll deal with you myself.
Commander!
Nog shouted desperately.
Locate Jake!
Wait, Commander Sisko said to Odo. He turned to a console and said, Computer, locate Jake Sisko. After a moment, the computer voice replied, Jake Sisko is not on Deep Space Nine. Frowning, Commander Sisko said, When did he leave? The computer said, Jake Sisko is aboard Deep Space Nine. Then where on the station is he? Demanded the commander. Jake Sisko is not on Deep Space Nine. Sisko and Odo looked at each other. Carefully, Sisko said, Computer, justify your statements about Jake Sisko. The computer replied, Jake Sisko is aboard Deep Space Nine. Jake Sisko is not aboard Deep Space Nine. Which is true? Yelled the frustrated commander. Both, the computer responded. Drawing a long breath, Sisko said, Let Nog go, Odo. I think we have a bad situation on our hands.